Now we'll hear from Siddhartha Rana. Most of the people have heard his name time again, and every year, I think, at least once, when the government announces the largest taxpayer. The man, the son himself, is going to talk about Mr. Prabhakar Rana. Please, Siddhartha sir.
Thank you, Kuberji. Deputy Chief of Mission, Government of India's Embassy in Nepal, Economic Counselor, current President Mr. Sunil Kesi, Nepal-India Chamber of Commerce, Executive Committee members past and present. I am greatly honored, me, my family, my colleagues from various companies past and present here today, that NICCI is honoring my late father in this way to remember him and to celebrate his legacy, particularly at a time when perhaps Nepal needs more people like him. We are deeply honored to have Dr. Subramaniam with us, who has flown in from Washington for a very short visit and will be giving us his keynote speech. I guess I've been asked to share with the audience here today what was he like as a parent, what was he like as a national figure, and what was he like as a corporate pioneer. I think if I was to sum up his personality and the person he was, I would say he was first of all a patriot, then in equal measure he was a monarchist and a democrat. Now by that statement, most people would say that's an incongruous statement. How can he remain a monarchist and a democrat? You know, having been born in the seat and the height of Rana power in Singhadarbar in 1935, where he was only one of two great-grandchildren to live alongside his great-grandfather, a ruling prime minister of Nepal during the Rana regime. The other was Bharat Samsher under Chandra Samsher. Although he was born in that kind of political privilege, which continued as his two older sisters married late King Mahendra's two brothers, Prince Himalaya and Prince Basundara. In all these years, I am very happy I have never inherited any baggage. And I can assure everyone in the audience here, as we have joint venture partners, the likes of ITC, a Fortune 500 company, and various other associations like Tata's, Bharat Petroleum, Exide Industries from India, and so on. None of us, as partners, as family, or as colleagues, ever had to endure baggage of him having misused his proximity to power and privilege, whether that be domestic or international. Now, in saying he was in equal measure a monarchist and a democrat, I think, you know, having been born into a powerful family that ran Nepal, he was able to evolve with time and remain current. And he attributes his single biggest success in life to education. He was a product of education beyond the shores of Nepal, when his great-grandfather, Bahadur Samsher, had the foresight to send him to Jesuit boarding school in Darjeeling, India. He remembers how he had to go on horseback, riding several days over the hills to Amlejganj, then on to Raxol and Calcutta by train, to quite an ordeal. But he says if he had not received that education in a Jesuit boarding environment where everyone was equal, he would not have adjusted to a modern-day Nepal. So I'm very happy and very proud to say, you know, he played a role not just in business. He played a role also in national affairs, as he was very close to the centers of power, maintained good relations with political parties, the institution of palace, regional friends, international friends. And I'm tempted to say that I was privy to a lot of his life wherein perhaps, had the powers that be had listened to his advice at that time, Nepal probably would have chosen a different path, given our current political history. He was always pragmatic about the role he played. He was a first-generation entrepreneur. He, after his studies, did a stint in the National Planning Commission, realized working in government was not for him. He then went on to be an understudy in New York at the United Nations under Rishikesh Shah, who I'm told was brilliant, a tough taskmaster, and ended up being roommates with none other than Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who, as you know, became Prime Minister of Pakistan, later hanged by Zia-ul Haq. And when he returned to Nepal, he met my mother, who was half Scottish and half South Indian. Her uncle had come to Nepal when everyone had given up to try and build a highway connecting Kathmandu to Birganj in economic order. So when she visited, she met him, they fell in love, and she convinced him, look, you've got a good brain, why don't you come study with me in India? So they lived together in Patna and attended Patna University together. Very unnatural in those days. So I think our liberal streak comes from the fact that he led his life in that manner. Mind you, he was already preordained to marry someone in India. His eldest sister, Princess Princep, being a very powerful woman politically, got very annoyed, so he couldn't marry in Nepal. He was probably the first member in family to marry a complete foreigner, but she convinced him that you shouldn't have to wait and hang around for what's called an angsa, inheritance. So he separated from his father with one rifle, went and got his university degree, and was persona non grata for many years till the Soltee opened, and his sister, who built the hotel, needed someone to manage it. He studied hotel management at the Ambassador Hotel in Mumbai in the early 60s and started the Soltee Hotel in 1966 and ran it only to realize he couldn't run it. So he would have been one of the first entrepreneurs in Nepal who championed the idea of international brands and partnership, reaching out to the Oberois. And at that time, he said it was very difficult to convince the likes of King Mahendra that Nepal needed a brand like Oberoi, had to sign contracts where they would earn fees for their brand, for their management, because institutional capacities in Nepal had not quite been built to deal with foreign trade and foreign contracting. He went on, as everyone knows, to open many other businesses as a pioneer in hydro, etc. And above all, I think where he succeeded was his ability to separate ownership from management. That is something I inherited. We've continued with that legacy, and I think we've taken it to new heights. Dr. Subramaniam, I know, will address the gathering here today, but you know, as part of this program, I was asked a question: what would he do in Nepal today? You know, I think the first thing, because of his love of tourism, he would have reached out to the decision makers in Nepal today to say, you were fully aware of the consequences of building 2 new airports, given the geopolitical realities. And I think he would have offered the government of Nepal that he would speak to the government of India to seek a solution and not to carry these 2 white elephants, wherein he probably would have said, look, we must now look to India to see if any one of their institutions would buy these 2 airports, buy the debt out, and make them commercially viable. That's the kind of practical man he was. Dr. Subramaniam, I know you're going to address us all today. I think, you know, as it's been covered, we went through a great period of economic development, foreign investments during the early 90s, when we were actually ahead of India in terms of economic reforms. It was the 1990 reforms that really ushered in a great sense of investment, technology transfer, management know-hows. But if I were to, through his lens, look at Nepal today, we've somewhat stalled. And it's almost inexcusable that we lie as a valuable piece of real estate, sandwiched between India and China, the second largest economy and the third largest economy in the making, and yet we seem to be caught in a vortex, a downward spiral of malgovernance and cronyism. Unless we come out of this, it's a mindset, it's a pattern, it's a habit, Nepal will not bear the fruits of our neighborly growth in the days ahead, and I hope you will cover the need for Nepal to have a plan. We don't have an economic plan. Bhutan has the Galefu project, very ambitious. The disheartening thing, I think, for me today, and which would have been for him, we're again talking about possibly a change in our political system. Already starting to blame a constitution, a piece of paper, parts of federalism, the provincial governments that don't work, and therefore will we continually be caught in only changing our political system every 10 to 15 years without addressing the economic needs. Nepal's got a problem of outward migration. In the last 4 to 5 months, I think about 45% of our GDP has been driven by remittance. At some point, we will have more eligible voters outside Nepal than inside Nepal. And in 10 years, I'm quite convinced we will not be able to hire productive youth in this country. And yet, we do not allow for foreigners to come live, work freely in this country. Given the demographic dividend that we could yield, given that we're a young society, we're not being able to harness that. So I foresee a day at this rate when the world at large, at least the OECD countries, countries like China, will have to look at continents like Africa, which will have a population boom in order to hire people just to keep industry alive. And I think Nepal will be one of them. Having said that, I'm again greatly honored for this event. Dr. Sunil Kesi, a great initiative on your part. And me, my colleagues, my family are humbled by this gesture and look forward to the continuation of the series after 2 years. Thank you.
Nepalkhabar.com